So side decking in Yu-Gi-Oh can be a bit of a nightmare, especially for like sort of like newer players. So we're just going to go through like a list of cards which we sort of like advise you to side deck in this format. Some that we don't advise, and that's why we're going to go over them. And then we just want to talk a little bit first about how to actually side deck. Something else in this video as well. We've got no hand traps in this video. We've already sort of like covered hand traps, and I think they're sort of like the most sort of easiest and obvious cards to just sort of side in and out. But yeah, first of all, with side decking, whenever you're side decking in Yu-Gi-Oh, you're not trying to make your deck unbeatable for your opponent. All you're trying to do is improve your deck. That's literally it. You just want your deck to be better against your opponent's deck than it was in the last game. You don't need to just like fill it with cards which are only there to cripple your opponent, even though sometimes that will just work. Like sometimes like you can do that. Sometimes there are cards that like allow you to do that. All you really need to do is just make your deck a lot sort of like smoother and just have an edge over the opponent in the game 2 or the game 3.
So I think like the way you need to think about side decking, like I think a lot of the things like taking away like the emotion. Say you just got absolutely like writ off game 1, right? So then you start side, like I don't know, maybe they made like some crazy plays and made like some weird stuff. You know, oh, I don't want that to happen. You need to think about the decks. Like a lot of decks they're all going to have quite sort of similar lists. So like if you're playing against a back row deck that has a lot of spell and traps, then just put in spell and trap removal. Like if they had a lot of, you know, they were playing Altergeist, but maybe they did like a Hulk combo, so you're going to side Nibiru. Like you need to not think about that. So like you need to think, have they got a lot of spell and traps? Yes, so use X, Y, and Z. And if they're making a lot of, you know, sort of monsters and they're going off like in that sense, then you need to think, okay, I need something that's going to stop all of these monster effects, whether it be hand traps, sphere modes, Nibiru, etc., etc.
You need to stick to the plan that you had before going into the match, because get like Liam said, getting absolutely roasted in a game by something that's sort of like an anomaly, you just sort of have to sort of ignore that and then go with what you know.
Because I think, like, even like I've not been playing the game as long as like probably some of you guys. Like it's only like competitively maybe like 2 and a bit years. So like I think when I first started, like when you're getting used to like certain matchups, like compared to now, it's like okay, I know exactly what I want to side. It's just stuff that's like either gonna improve my turn or it's gonna try and board wipe them. So like if they're going, you know, if you win game 1 and they're going first for game 2, then you put in your Evenlys, your Storms, etc., etc. But like if you go first game 1 and you get absolutely rinsed and you plans to go game 1 first again, then you need to put in stuff like your pointers, your judgments, your strikes, that kind of thing. And I think that needs to be the theory, like across every single game that you play.
I think something that's really important for side decking as well is that when you build your side deck, something that not a lot of people actually give a lot of thought is when you build your deck and your side deck, you should actually go through your main deck and actually decide what comes out in each matchup for your side deck cards, because a lot of people will just have all these like side deck cards that they know work, but then they just don't know what to take out for them.
Look, I think you should only be siding like at max maybe 4, like 5 cards tops.
Like, I say like 4, 6, because then like you've got like maybe 2 play sets or something. If you like side deck 3 ofs, like I know you side deck a lot of 2 ofs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other thing as well is that like just again the sort of try not to get tilted. So say for instance your opponent goes off some combo deck, you drop a Veiler, you think the Veiler's going to stop them, and then they drop Call by the Grave. That doesn't mean that the hand traps are bad in game 2 and 3. You definitely keep the hand traps.
If it's like a big combo deck, then maybe just stick with your hand traps, because like even if you've got say 2 or 3 in your open hand, what are the odds that they're going to have the same chord buys? Like it's just not going to happen.
And if they do, they've got it and they deserve to win.
Yeah, but obviously.
So we're just going to go through some of the ones that we've plucked out of our folders. These are some of the ones that we're using right now, some of the ones that we have used recently, or some of the ones that we have used before and we think that maybe they could like have an application again. So to start off the side deck, we're just going to go through some of the monsters that you can like side deck in this format. There are like a handful here, but there's actually like only one which we can properly recommend using, and that is Pancratops. Not really a lot to say about this card. If you've played recently, I think you know how powerful this card is against like almost any deck. Like any time you go second, the fact that it's a summon condition to drop it means that they can't even like negate touching the board in the first place. You can then just go straight into battle phase, attack over a problem like something like Herald of the Arclight. People used to use it to attack into Silcoitus.
It just holds so much like power on the board. Yeah, like, when you summon it, like it makes like obviously he's just a free summon, big body, but the fact that like your opponent then has to like play around him, like he's one of the standout ones, like for sure.
If like this card usually forces 2 disruptions every time you drop it, so like for instance, just as an example, you can drop this against Herald Savage, attack over the Herald, and then in the main phase 2 you can like chain, like you can just activate this to force the Savage, or you can like carry on playing. If they then trigger the Savage, you can use this to remove the Savage. So it's like it just does so much for one single card. It's not really surprising that it's limited to one, but I don't think that's like a reason to not play it all. Like,
no, it's like
you should still definitely just play the card.
It's brilliant.
And then we've got like 2 which are like sort of similar in what they try to do to like Pankratops, I guess. Cyber Dragon, obviously you can drop this and it will like swallow a monster in the extra monster zone. And then Kaku does a similar sort of thing, but like they're sort of like good and bad in like different ways. So like this one is a summon condition, so this one can't be stopped. Whereas this one you can reveal this and then like they can like negate it with Appaloosa, for instance. I think the main problem with these 2 cards is that like the Eldritch deck and stuff like that, they don't actually leave anything in the extra monster zone, do they?
No.
So
it's only against. I think this is probably the best one against something like Appaloosa, but like it's super weird because you have to play the Mega Fleet as well, and it's like this is taking 2 spots to like out one card, so it's like it's a bit weird, but.
Whenever like a deck uses a Hulk combo, which makes Auroradon, which then tributes the Auroradon to summon from the early on from the deck, they're generally just not going to end on anything in the extra monster zone. So like neither of these will be live to do what you want them to do. So I can't really advise playing these like right now. I just don't think it's the right format for these cards, but they are like options nevertheless.
Don't step on snake.
And then the last sort of like monsters are like Sphere Mode, Gameciel, and then there's also like Lava Golem included in this, and then there's like the Kaiju Slumber for the Gameciel as well, so like you could play like an entire Kaiju package. I don't think these cards are bad by any means, especially against like Eldritch Adamancipator. I don't think they're very good against Infernobles because they take a card out your hand.
Yeah.
But like, it sort of just depends on what deck you're playing as well, because especially with the Sphere Mode and the Lava Golem, because they take your normal summon away, you have to be able to play a deck that can extend past like even using its normal summon in the first place.
Yeah, because if you're thinking like, you know, as like a side deck sort of craft theory, it's like, oh, this is amazing because it kind of just like flops your opponent's board. But if you've got no follow up, then it's pointless playing a card that's like, yeah, it's like super horrible for your opponent, but if you've got no like follow up play, there's nothing to come second, it's like it's just pointless.
They just bring back Block Dragon and kill you.
So just bear that in mind. But like I do like Sphere Mode. It's like I kind of like it because it's one of those cards where like if you're playing Nibiru as like, you know, they're out to like these big combo decks, like you don't have to worry about what they make if you like just siding this, because if you just bang this, it's like, you know, it's kind of turnover. But
it's a nice 6 card as well, and like you was just saying, like Nibiru, they can put up like counters to stop it happening.
Exactly, and this is just
whereas
like,
this is just
like,
there's like basically no way to stop that happening. And then the other thing with this card, like the Kaijus in particular, is like these are just really good outs to Dragoon. But like I don't think that's enough for these to be like just staples at the minute, because I think there are like better cards that do that. Like go on to some sort of like board breaker spells, and there's like quite a lot here. There's a couple of limited ones, but yeah, so we're just going to talk about them just one after the other. So talents.
This card's pretty nuts, to be honest. Like, it's probably my favourite thing that's come out like recently. Like, it's got like a lot of stuff going on with it, but it's like it's proper weird because like before this format, if this card came out like a ban list or 2 ago, like it'd be like immense, yeah. But like everybody just makes a negate for everything now, so it's like it doesn't feel like as strong. But obviously, when the formats change and things, you know, sort of get a little bit slower if they do, then this is going to be like I think even more impactful. But like as it stands right now, like I'm super gassed about this card. I think it's amazing.
I've been really impressed with this card as well. Like having played it since the card came out. Like initially when I first like got this card, I actually felt like I'd almost like wasted money because I didn't actually think it was going to be as good as it is. And having played it, it's actually just insane. Like the fact that you can steal a Dragoon, activate its 2 effects to clear a board, and just like kill them with their own Dragoon, like it's so nuts. The draw effect is like bonkers. I play this card in like Sky Striker, for instance. You can like talents, draw 2, desires, draw 2. You just like sort of snowball so much advantage. I think the effect that I've used the least is the hand effect. But
I think it's weird because like obviously like I think you guys have probably seen George's Infernobles. There's so many times we've been like play testing and like you hand trap him and then it's like okay, like you think you've got somewhere and then he just drops this and like looks at your hand and then he ends up ripping 2 cards and you wasted like 3 cards because you've hand trapped him. So yeah, like every effect has got like some proper power uses. Like I think it's nuts.
So yeah, we'll go on to the next one. we're going to talk about these two together because I think these are actually just very similar in what they do. So we got Forbidden Droplet and Dark Ruler No More. Essentially going second, they are just the same card. Like, they're meant to just mass negate a board where your opponent can't respond. But they have like different sort of niches. Now, like Droplets is like, I think Droplets is a lot safer because you can actually main deck it, and I think that makes it like just that much better, because having a card like this in your main deck that you can draw game one when you lose the die roll is like nuts.
I agree. I think the way I'd like categorise these cards is this one's very like proactive, because it's making you actually like play some things that are going to like actually progress sort of your turn as well, whereas this one's just very reactive, so you've let them make a board and then you're just hoping to see this. But I think Droplets is like, again, it's one of those cards that it's pretty mental. Like,
yeah, I think the damage drop is actually like the attack drop is just,
yeah, because I think like
it's the icing on it, man.
Ever since Dark Ruler came out, like I've never ever really been a fan of this, because it's like, yeah, you negate their board, but then you still have to clear it. You can't do any damage, and it's like this is like completely different. Like it's doing everything that this kind of should, right? Like
Yeah.
it's loads better, I think. But
And it's just quick play. You just set it, and
Yeah,
it's just
so
another trap card basically.
obviously, any deck that gives you like a plus off a discard, this is just nuts, because it's like kind of acting like mini imperm plus one, so it's crazy.
Just always remember that if you are playing with this card, and your opponent has Herald of the Arclight on the field, you actually have to like set your cards onto the field before you use this, just because you can't actually discard from your hand because you can't pay the cost, because they're going to get banished instead. And then we've got just a niche Regeki. This card hasn't seen play in probably like ages.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it's actually sick.
Like it's kind of nuts, really.
Yeah, so in the same sort of sense as like something like Talents, where you want to hold it until all the negates have gone, and then you can just drop this and the board's just dead. Like, yeah, look, I think I'm definitely going to start to like play this card again, because I think as well with the same idea that we've like Lightning Storm. Like I know that we made a video and we was like talking a lot of trash about Lightning Storm, and I think my problem with Lightning Storm is that I was siding into it where my opponent was expecting it. So what I did instead is actually just put it into the main deck of my Sky Striker deck, and it's actually just been like so much better since. Like I much prefer it that way. And I think Regeki might be the same sort of deal, where it's just a board breaker that's just no one expects you to drop. So yeah, and then we've got Super Poly. So up until Dragoon was released, basically I would probably have not advised this card be used like at all. I think like the main problem with this card at the minute is that Herald and Savage are not the same attribute, so you can't Mud Dragon them, you can't put them into Starving Venom.
I think, as well as the like Cyber Dragon, like it's the fact that it takes up like a lot of slots for like obviously some formats, when it was, you know, Crazy Orcus format and everything was dark and like it makes perfect sense, but like this format, like everything's kind of like different. So it's like, what do you actually super poly if you're not going to play like 6 sort of super poly you know, like package? Like it's, but yeah, again it's like format dependent, but I don't know, obviously think about it, like nobody's playing like super competitive at the minute, so whatever your locals is sort of full of, then obviously it's worth thinking about.
Something that you can do as well is, I think you can super poly against the Invoke deck, because they always end on Mechaba, and then there's always going to be either like a Maximus or a Ecclesia like there, but like it's quite like lackluster for that.
Yeah, because it's like, obviously before, like this is kind of like, you know, the best super poly target, because it's like a bit of a pain to get rid of afterwards, but like Mud Dragon just doesn't really like do anything.
Yeah, it's just
but
it's spud. And then we've got Forbidden Chalice and Mind Control. I think these are also similar in a sense as well, where these are cards that you will play not to actually resolve them, but to just force a negate. Like what are the like? I remember like when this card was at 3, especially, like you'd make a really sick board, and then you'd plan what you were like negating. And then your opponent would just drop Mind Control, and it'd actually just change the entire way that you had to play it into it.
I think going back to like Orcus format, this was like I've always loved this card. I think it's just mental.
It's
like,
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, like especially now that like when Links came out and you were like, oh, I can steal a Link and make my own Links. Like it's just nuts.
Cool.
But like obviously it going to one, Konami, they were on to us. But yeah, like on its own, like as a standalone, it's not, everything is going to get eaten by negate, so it's not like super crazy or super impactful. But there's going to be games where you've sided this in, seen it, and maybe you baited something, and then yeah, like it is a proper game changer sometimes.
Sometimes you might even just steal an Appaloosa, and then that Appaloosa will negate the rest of their negates.
Yeah, it's nuts, but yeah, it's just like at one, it's just like
It's kind of just like a less sort of option filled free tactical talent, because Talents does that as well.
Yeah.
So it's just a bit weird, but Yeah. Also, Chalice is really good against the trashy Numeron crap.
Yeah, it's true.
People love to play. And then we've got some Spell and Trap hate. There are a few honourable mentions, such as Denko Sekka. We just didn't include it just because there isn't really a deck that can play Denko and then play it again.
It's the same kind of argument with Sphere Mode,
yeah.
like Sphere Mode for the combo and then obviously Denko for the back row decks, but it's like you really need something that's like crazy afterwards. Like.
I think the problem with Denko is that unlike Sphere Mode, like Sphere Mode actually just removes the board, whereas when you summon Denko, you either need to like win as fast as possible, or your opponent is just waiting to kill the Denko, and then like it basically did nothing. It just got you like a free turn, but that turn matters less when you haven't got a normal summon.
It's true.
But like all these cards are really cool. Like obviously we spoke a lot about Lightning Storm. I personally like it in the main deck just because it's not expected to be there, and like it is a blowout, I suppose, when you see it in game one.
When obviously when it resolves, it's like one of the best cards in the game,
Yeah.
like without a shadow. But it's like the same with everything. It's like it's super weird where like you're siding into things that you kind of know just when you want it to resolve, like it's not going to resolve. So. Yeah, it's kind of weird, like everything's getting eaten by negates at the minute, but...
It's just the clause that you can't activate it unless you control no cards, otherwise you'd be able to force the negates and then drop it.
Yeah.
But you can't do that. But I think out of these, I think Cosmic is like my favourite one at the minute. It's just like so good against like the Eldritch deck especially. Just actually banishing the cards so they don't get the resource in the grave, really cool. Twin Twisters just doesn't feel like amazing, because like, even though... Like a lot of the time with Twin Twisters, I always see the discard out like cost as like a good
benefit,
thing.
Yeah.
But like I feel like the decks I've been playing with recently just don't feel that way.
It's like if you're playing against something that has like a negate as well, and then you activate this discard, and say your discard isn't crazy relevant, then you kind of just like neg 2 for nothing, right? So it's like, yeah, like I've gone off it. I haven't sided it for a long time, but
Big up Cosmic Cyclone, it's sick. And then we've got like one sort of like weird card, because this is actually like nothing like the other cards. I think this card is basically cut from the same cloth as Phantasme, where its benefit isn't because it's stopping your opponent playing, it's basically
giving
you a lot of advantage for your opponent playing. Obviously this card isn't really good going second, but when you go first and your opponent's playing that invoked Dragma deck, if they open Meltdown and Nadir, this card is actually just going to ruin their life. And then for like the last cards, we've just got a bunch of stuff that is like good for going first. So like decks like Adamancipator and stuff like that, we're usually siding cards like Appointed the Red Lotus or Solemn Judgment to be able to like take away the big threats that like break their boards.
Yeah, I think like this, obviously I played a load of Adamancipator, but like a pointer, like when I'm testing online, I'm just not going to buy a common card that's like in the UK like £9. So yeah, it's annoying, but like this is like just subpar, I think, to a pointer. A pointer just gives you like so much more, but like this going first and negate pretty much anything is pretty big. But
I think like this is something that we've like disagreed about before, but like I'm willing to like stick up for this card, because I think that even when you just like go first and they've say like hand trapped you or whatever, even if you just set this and they don't have the stupid board breaker card that this was meant to negate, like this can take away like the normal summon, which is like it's broken.
yeah, it
like,
can be.
It's just another Omni negate that you didn't even have to make from the extra day.
I think, do you know what I found like annoying with this card? Is like all that ever seems to happen is Golden Lord in hand, pop. Great.
Amazing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then sort of like similar to Judgment, I suppose, but like this card's actually just completely like it actually goes into like different decks, doesn't it? So
yeah, like it's probably the most like Judgment card standalone that can go into like pretty much anything, right? Like it's got a lot of variants.
I think Strike is like one of the few trap cards which I actually think is like sick going second as well, because like all you have to do is like you don't necessarily have to break a board, you just have to soften it, and then you set Strike, and then like what's going to happen is your opponent is either going to think that they can just go straight for like the access code and just like blow you away, and in which case you can actually just blow them away with this card. I think this card's nuts. I think it's like, especially like in the Altergeist deck and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. I love Strike. It's like I always say to you, and it's like one of the first cards like I ever side in when I'm thinking about like side decking. Like I think it's nuts. But
I think as well, if you side in something like Strike in like a combo deck, because your opponent is never ever going to side a back row. Yeah, so
exactly.
this is just going to stick. Like they can like, or like, yeah, so you've set Strike and then they've Dark Ruled your board, and then they sort of go into like that access code, which is they're planning to just like break your whole board. If you just flip Strike there, then it's like
all the resources
game.
are just gone. Yeah, I love it. It's mint. Play it.
And then we've got Imperial Order. This actually is speaking for all floodgates. This is anti-spell fragments. There can be only one. Rivalry goes and all that sort of stuff. So obviously, whenever you go first, you've got basically just got to pick the one which is applicable to your deck.
Exactly.
And then it has to obviously be relevant to the opponent's deck as well. I think Rivalry is probably like my favourite one. You flip it when they summon the tokens off the Link Cross, and then because of game mechanics and how tokens work, they're forced to keep the tokens. They have to get rid of everything else, and then your opponent basically can't play again until you kill the tokens, and you're not going to do that until you can kill them. So it's pretty cool.
My favourite floodgate is absolutely none of them, because none of you should play them.
I guess this, which is, we should have spoke about this in the same sort of like as the Ball Breakers. It's very much just like the Super Poly, the Dark Ruler and stuff. This is basically just a way to just clear a big board. But this is like one of the ones that you actually want to drop last, I guess, and actually like take the board away. I really like this card. I think like, especially if you can main this card, if you do play a blind second deck, just main this card. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's not a reason to not main it.
The battle phase doesn't matter when they've got no board.
Yeah, like,
just remember.
Well, if you had a battle phase, you'd be attacking monsters.
Just get rid of everything.
So like these ones are pretty cool because these ones are actually like the only sort of traps which are just highly resilient to back row removal. So like you set this, and then your opponent like storms you, you chain this. Even though they've stormed you, you've lost like your back row, they've still got to be able to kill you without using their graveyard for the turn. Same thing with Sanctum, but for using the extra deck. Obviously, like the Scythe is not very pretty to play. It's not very nice to draw. Something to note though about drawing Scythe in the Dogmatica deck in particular is what you can actually do is you can set the Scythe, and then on their turn when you flip Punishment to pop a card, you can send Entis, and then you can use Entis to pop your own Scythe. So that's pretty cool. But like, big fan of these. Like this is the namesake of the channel. We are big fans of Sanctum.
So guys, thanks for watching. Super appreciate you guys tuning in again. If you guys have got any suggestions that you'd be popping in your side deck that maybe everybody else hasn't thought about, then obviously drop them in the comments. As always, like, comment and subscribe. Really appreciate the feedback that we're getting. So yeah, we'll see you next time.